I have spent most of my life watching people confuse permission with prudence. A bank gives permission, a broker gives permission, a real estate agent gives permission. Your neighbors give permission, your culture gives permission. None of those people have to live with your monthly cash flow after the papers are signed. That is the part I want to talk about, because a great many families are staring at houses priced around $500,000 and asking the wrong question. They ask whether they can get approved. They ask whether other people their age are buying. They ask whether prices might go higher if they wait. They ask whether rent is dead money. They ask whether owning a home is the adult thing to do. The question that matters is simpler and far harsher. Can you buy that house and still have a life afterward? When I was younger, I learned that the real danger in money is not obvious extravagance. It is the respectable decision that leaves you with no room to breathe. It is the purchase that looks sensible from the outside and quietly wrecks your freedom from the inside. It is the asset that everybody applauds while your cash flow is bleeding to death behind the curtains. A $500,000 house in this market can be exactly that kind of decision. I know the sales pitch. You scroll listings late at night. Every house that is not visibly collapsing costs an amount that would have sounded absurd a generation ago. The kitchen is tired, the carpet is old, the basement looks like it was renovated by a man with a coupon and a weekend. The yard is tiny, the commute is long, and yet the listing speaks with the confidence of royalty. Starter home, great opportunity, won't last. Then you look at your salary and begin doing private arithmetic in your head. Maybe I missed something. Maybe everyone else got richer and forgot to tell me. Maybe this is just what normal costs now. The answer is usually more uncomfortable than that. The answer is that the math no longer resembles the story. People are still telling about housing. People keep repeating an older script in a newer market. They still speak as if owning a home is a simple moral milestone. They still speak as if the decision begins and ends with whether a lender says yes. They still speak as if the stretch is temporary, the pain is normal, and the equity will cure all wounds. They still speak as if the house itself is proof of stability. But a house purchased without margin is not stability. It is a contract with anxiety. You can see the problem most clearly when you stop talking in slogans and start talking in cash. Take a $500,000 house. The old clean rule was 20% down. That means $100,000 in cash before you even begin the real expense of ownership. For a lot of households, that number does not feel like a down payment. It feels like a mountain range. They are not a little short. So they move to the next script, put less down, 5%, 10%. That is what many people actually do, because reality gives them little choice. But the moment you do that, the monthly burden changes character. You are not just financing the house. You are financing your lack of initial capital. You begin carrying private mortgage insurance, which is one of those elegant financial inventions that charges people extra for not already being wealthy enough. It protects the lender. It does not protect your peace of mind. Then comes the mortgage itself, a loan around $450,000. At today's kinds of borrowing costs does not produce a cute little payment. It produces a serious one. Add principal and interest, add property taxes, add homeowners insurance, add the maintenance that people love to forget. When they are emotionally attaching themselves to countertops, add PMI, suddenly the house is no longer a line item. It becomes a regime. That is the real word. A housing regime. A fixed monthly structure that does not care whether your child needs braces, your car needs brakes, your air conditioning fails in July, or your employer decides the economy has changed and your hours are now someone else's problem. When you total those pieces, the monthly cost for that $500,000 house can land around $4,367. That figure is not melodrama. It is simply the house once you tell the whole truth. And once you tell the whole truth, another question appears. What kind of income is required to carry that cost without quietly wrecking the rest of your financial life? If you use a conservative rule and keep housing around 28% of gross income, you need something near $187,000 a year. If you use the looser bank-style rule and drift toward a higher debt burden, you are still near $150,000. Now pause there. This is where the culture tries to rush you. It says yes, but people are buying these homes every day. That is true. People also do many things every day that put them on a slow conveyor belt toward stress. Volume does not turn strain into wisdom. A great many families can qualify for a house they cannot honestly afford. That difference is one of the most expensive misunderstandings in modern middle-class life. Qualification is a lender's opinion about whether the loan can survive. Affordability is a household's reality about whether the people can survive. Those are not the same standard. The lender does not need your life to feel spacious. The lender does not need you to invest consistently. The lender does not need you to replace the roof without panic. The lender does not need your marriage to be calm, your sleep to be steady, or your retirement contributions to continue. The lender only needs enough confidence that the payment will keep limping forward. That is a radically lower bar than the one a wise person should use. I have always believed that what matters most in money is not the asset alone. It is the relationship between the asset and the owner. A wonderful business purchased at a foolish price can become a poor investment. A decent business purchased with ample margin can become a durable one. Housing is no different. A house that flatters your ego while strangling your flexibility is not a triumph. It is a beautiful hostage situation. Let me make this concrete. Imagine a household bringing in $160,000 a year. On paper, that sounds strong. It sounds like the kind of income that should feel safe. It sounds like a level at which normal aspirations should be comfortably within reach. Then taxes arrive, payroll deductions arrive, retirement contributions arrive, the gross number shrinks into something real. Say the family is taking home around $9,500 a month. Subtract that $4,367 housing burden. What is left is about $5,133 for the rest of life. Now life begins collecting 2 car payments. Because most modern housing markets assume your job and your shelter will be separated by enough miles to make walking a fantasy. Insurance for the car's fuel, student loans, because the credentials that help produce the income came with their own permanent monthly invoice. Health costs, groceries, utilities, which rise politely until the bill arrives, and then speak bluntly. Internet phones. Soon that proud middle-class household is looking at the remainder and realizing it is not a cushion. It is a countdown. It is the amount standing between them and the next surprise. This is where people begin lying to themselves. They say the first year will be the hardest. They say raises will come. They say they will cut discretionary spending. They say they will build the emergency fund after closing. They say they can always refinance later. They say housing always works out in the long run. Some of those things might happen. The problem is that the house does not wait for them to happen. Month 4, the car needs work. Month 7, the cooling system quits. Month 9, someone at work gets laid off and everyone else's hours are cut. Month 12, the tax bill rises, the insurance premium rises, and the family that thought it bought security begins learning what permanent vigilance feels like. House poor is a phrase people say too casually. It should sound more serious than it does, because what it usually means is this: you own the symbol, you lost the freedom, you got the keys and surrendered the margin, you bought the rooms and gave away the ability to absorb shocks. You acquired the thing that was supposed to make you feel established, and in the process made yourself financially fragile. I do not say this to sneer at home ownership. I say it because a lot of people have been taught to rebrand distress as adulthood. They speak of the constant squeeze as if it were noble. They speak of barely making the payment as if it were discipline. They speak of declining every pleasure, delaying every repair, and fearing every interruption as if it were simply the normal initiation rite of responsible people. It is not noble. It is not maturity. It is a structural mismatch between price and income, dressed up as personal growth. There is a reason so many intelligent, hardworking families feel as if they are failing the housing market. In many cases, they are not failing the market at all. The market has detached itself from the cash realities of ordinary households and continues marching as if wages had kept up. They have not what previous generations could buy at ratios that left room for life. Many current buyers can only approach by accepting ratios that leave room for panic. That is not the same dream with a little inflation. That is a different game. And a different game requires a different kind of honesty. One of the most dangerous forces in finance is social pressure disguised as common sense. Your parents bought a home. Your friends are buying. The culture says renting is throwing money away. A house is supposed to mean you made it. All of that noise can push a person to sign a 30-year commitment. They have not actually underwritten in the sober way they would examine a business or an investment. If I were analyzing a business, I would want to know its resilience under stress. I would want to know what happens when revenue softens. I would want to know what fixed obligations remain when optimism leaves the room. I would want to know whether management has a margin of safety or merely a favorable story. Families should treat a house purchase with the same seriousness. What happens if income dips for 6 months? What happens if insurance rises sharply? What happens if a major repair arrives at the same time as a medical bill? What happens if one spouse needs to change jobs? What happens if the neighborhood that looked permanently desirable becomes less? So what happens if you cannot refinance when you expected to? What happens if life behaves like life? If the only way the house works is in a world where everything cooperates, then the house does not work. That is not pessimism. That is underwriting. And the great tragedy is that many buyers do not underwrite their own lives because the transaction around them is designed to make speed feel smart. Everyone in the machine gets paid when the deal closes. The bank has a loan, the agent has a commission, the insurer has a policy, the house has been sold. Only the buyer has to wake up months later to discover that the entire calculation was built around endurance, not comfort. That buyer finds out slowly. At the grocery store, when the account balance matters more than the shopping list. When the child asks for an activity fee, and the answer depends on whether the check engine light comes on this week. When tires become a strategic decision, when a water heater becomes a financing event, when a simple dinner out begins to feel like moral failure, when the house, which was supposed to be the backdrop for a life, becomes the dominant character in it. This is the part of housing that glossy advice never likes to mention. A house can own your attention long before it builds your wealth. There are people sitting in homes that look respectable from the street and feel like a trap from the inside. They are not reckless people. Often they are disciplined people who accepted a structure that gave them no room for error. They are people who stretched because stretching had become the normalized language of aspiration. They are people who confused the ability to endure a payment with the wisdom of carrying it. I have always liked simple tests. Here is one. If buying the house requires you to stop investing, stop saving, and start hoping, then the house is too expensive. Hope is not a financing strategy. Here is another. If the house only works when you assume future raises, stable employment, low surprise costs, and perfect household harmony, then it does not work. Here is another. If the house would make you afraid to take a career risk, afraid to start a business, afraid to reduce your hours, afraid to move, afraid to speak honestly about money, then the house is not creating freedom. It is consuming it. People sometimes say that homeownership builds wealth. That can be true, but the sentence is incomplete. A house can help build wealth only if you can survive the carrying cost without starving the other engines of wealth. You still need cash flow, you still need savings, you still need retirement contributions, you still need the ability to handle maintenance without turning to high-interest debt. You still need the emotional steadiness that comes from not treating every month like a test of character. Real wealth is not merely equity trapped in a building. Real wealth is the ability to make decisions from strength instead of fear. It is the ability to say no to bad opportunities. It is the ability to weather interruptions. It is the ability to choose a smaller gain with a calmer life over a larger image with a smaller margin. That is why I do not automatically admire the household that forced itself into the $500,000 house. I first want to know what else they gave up. Did they give up investing? Did they give up sleep? Did they give up flexibility? Did they give up the option to move for a better job? Did they give up the chance to enjoy the life the house was supposed to improve? The financial industry is very good at selling narratives that flatter emotion. Buy now before you are priced out forever. You are paying your landlord's mortgage. Stretch a little now and your future self will thank you. Real estate always goes up. There is a half-truth in many of those lines, and half-truths are among the costliest products ever sold. Yes, ownership can be valuable. Yes, a good property can appreciate. Yes, housing can be a component of wealth. None of that makes an overpriced, over-leveraged purchase wise for a household with thin margin. In fact, one of the most underappreciated advantages a renter can have is optionality. A renter with savings, investments, and low stress may be in far better financial condition than an owner with no liquidity and constant pressure. Pride does not show up in the balance sheet. Flexibility does. That does not mean renting is automatically superior. It means the comparison must be honest. What are you paying? What are you preserving? What are you risking? What are you losing by forcing the purchase now? What are you gaining besides the ability to say you bought? Many people are far too ashamed to say the obvious sentence. This does not make sense for me right now. I wish more people would say it. There is no medal for becoming house poor. There is no trophy for buying stress at a premium. There is no wisdom in turning your budget into a tightrope merely because the culture has confused strain with progress. Some markets are simply not viable for some incomes at some moments in time. That is not a character defect. That is arithmetic. And arithmetic, unlike aspiration, does not negotiate. If a $500,000 house requires an income structure that your household does not have, then the adult decision is not to fantasize harder. The adult decision is to step back, preserve capital, and refuse to make a large, irreversible commitment on the basis of pressure and symbolism. Maybe that means buying less house. Maybe it means buying later. Maybe it means moving farther out. Maybe it means moving to another market entirely. Maybe it means renting for longer and investing the difference with discipline. Maybe it means accepting that the old script does not fit the new math. That last possibility offends people because it sounds like surrender, but often it is discernment. The world is full of people who ruined a decade trying to defend an image they were not wealthy enough to maintain. They bought the house to prove they belonged, then spent years proving they were trapped. I would rather see a family live beneath its ego and above its fear. I would rather see them preserve the ability to save every month, invest every month, repair what breaks, and still laugh at dinner. I would rather see them in a smaller place with real breathing room than in a larger place with a permanent knot in the stomach. A house should support a life. A life should not be sacrificed to support a house. That sounds obvious until the market starts shouting at you. Then obvious things become strangely difficult to hear. If your household income is well below the level needed to carry the true monthly cost of that $500,000 house, then the answer is not to borrow your way into optimism. The answer is to face the numbers while you still have the power to walk away. That power matters. Once the purchase is made, exit becomes expensive. You cannot casually undo the decision. There are transaction costs, emotional costs, credit costs, down payment losses, moving costs, and all the psychological pressure that comes from admitting that the grand purchase was a mistake. That is why the most important moment is not after you own the house. It is before the signatures, before the furniture, before the compliments, before the trap is hidden by ceremony. At that stage, you still possess the greatest financial advantage of all choice. You can still decide that a lender's yes is not your yes. You can still decide that a nice kitchen is not worth a decade of fragility. You can still decide that being realistic is more honorable than performing success. You can still decide that wealth is built by margin, not by applause. When I look at housing through that lens, the conclusion is not complicated. For a very large portion of American households, A $500,000 home is not an affordable step-up. It is an invitation to long-term financial strain disguised as normal life. That does not mean nobody should buy one. It means the household should be genuinely equipped to do so without starving every other part of its balance sheet. It means the payment should leave room for maintenance, emergencies, investing, retirement, and ordinary joy. It means the home should fit inside the life, not consume it. The right purchase is not the maximum amount you can force yourself to endure. The right purchase is the one that allows the rest of your financial life to remain healthy after the novelty wears off. That is the same principle I have used in investing for decades. Do not reach for what flatters you. Reach for what leaves you strong. Do not confuse motion with progress. Do not confuse approval with safety. Do not confuse a large asset with a wise decision. And above all, do not hand your future freedom to a monthly payment. That was only possible because everyone in the process was paid to tell you it was normal. Sometimes the smartest financial move is not to win the bid. Sometimes it is to keep your margin. Sometimes it is to look at a market that has lost contact with income reality and say, I will not build my life on broken math. There is a great deal of dignity in that sentence. More dignity, in fact, than in a set of keys earned by putting your household one surprise away from trouble. If you want wealth, pursue the structure that lets capital accumulate, lets stress stay manageable, lets opportunities remain available, and lets life still feel like life. If a house helps you do that, wonderful. If a house prevents you from doing that, then no amount of cultural praise can turn the burden into wisdom. The $500,000 house is not truly expensive because of its sticker price. It is truly expensive when it takes your margin, your flexibility, your sleep, your options, and your future savings along with it. That is the cost people must learn to calculate. And that is why the right question was never whether the bank would approve you. The right question was whether, after all the noise faded, you could still comfortably afford to be the person living inside the house.